Hey there, it's Dr. Jan, and today we're going to do a deep dive into the role of bystanders in the workplace and why they are often seen as the saviors of targets. But in fact, they are a major part of the problem in bully culture. If you've been bullied, I'm sure you have thought about why bystanders can't just do the right thing. Why do they stay silent? Or even more importantly, why are they often engaged in bullying? Have you ever thought about that? Those are some great questions, and I'm here to offer some answers to those very questions and even give you some tips later on at the end. So please make sure that you stay for the end. Let's make sure we're all on the same page about bystanders. There is no way bystanders are neutral. In fact, nobody is neutral in bully culture. There's no neutrality. Bystanders are constantly making choices every day, every interaction that they think that they are doing in their best interest. They may be making these decisions consciously or unconsciously, but what they're doing is trying to ensure that they don't become the target. They don't want to be you. So bystanders, often like us, if you're a target, find themselves in a moral dilemma. They're torn between doing what is right and safeguarding their own interest. Frankly, I find it to be a tough spot to be in. Bystanders are constantly making calculated decisions, and they're not just passive observers. And to be honest, bystanders have lots of choices that they're continually making. And so sometimes they align themselves with the bully, thinking it's the best way they can protect themselves and get ahead. And so they engage in bullying. This means they may not say anything about the bullying, or sometimes they are actually actively bullying you. They are also known to put their heads down or walk away. They might not intervene on your behalf. They don't want to be the target, and they're rationalizing every decision, including those to keep silence, as a means of self protection. So the rewards, oftentimes, for staying silent can seem greater than the risks of speaking up. So, bystanders are continually making decisions about what they think is in their best interest, and generally they're doing those things in the moment. But here's the thing that bystanders don't consider, because again, they're only thinking about the consequence or reward in the moment or the very near future, is that their silence comes at a cost. It perpetuates a toxic cycle that harms everyone involved, including themselves. Silence is complicity, and there's a good foundation for an organization that has silence and bullying that no one speaks out about is to develop a culture of bullying. So when they don't speak up, yes, they may not be the target in that moment, but they're increasing the likelihood that bullying will become part of their organizational culture, part of the norms, part of the values and behavior, that when a target leaves, they could be cycled into that role and they might become the next target. So the short-term payoff may be in their best interest, but the long-term payoff, may work against them. Being silent is not the only role that bystanders play. Many of them actually opt in to actively engage in the bullying themselves, and this can happen on various degrees. Some bystanders are openly engaging in the bullying against you. Some are doing it when the bully is around so that the person can see and they can show their loyalty. They're engaging in the bullying again to develop a relationships with the bully so they get what they want. This is particularly true when the boss is a bully. So if your boss is a bully, the standard of behavior is bullying. And so bystanders partake in this because they can and because they want the boss to reward this type of behavior. They think it will get them their promotion, their raise. And guess what? It often does. I think I've told you this story before, is I worked in a place with a lot of bystanders who did many things. Many kept their heads down, kept silence. Many actively engaged in the bullying against me. And one woman in particular was a part-time faculty, meaning every year she had to get a contract to have a job the next year. One of the things that she did was openly and actively engage in bullying against me. Lied, came at me, cyberbullied, spoke to students behind my back. And the reason she did that, again, she was making a calculated decision to get where she needed to be in the workplace because she wanted to build a bond and show the bully, who happened to be head of the hiring committee, that she was on their side. The reality is that paid off for her. Okay. She ended up in a full-time, she's in a tenured faculty now. And so her decision to engage in bullying paid off. It got her to where she needed to be. And so for her, she didn't care about what happened to me. She was only making decisions about what was in her best interest. And now that was a win for her. I don't know if you remember, but when I first took a job in one of the universities, my dean or my assistant dean told me to keep my head down, to not say anything, and to play on my phone when I saw the bullying. In retrospect, and when I look back now, his advice actually was good advice, which I should have maybe taken, right? Because he knew that if I spoke up against the bully, which I did 2 weeks when I got into my job, is that I wasn't going to get where I wanted to be, and it was going to be a problem for me. His advice was to keep my mouth shut like a bystander so that I could get tenured and promoted. So his advice was to not engage with the bully, but to just keep silent. And he then was promoting bully culture instead of being able to intervene. And so when bystanders engage in bullying or keep silent, they're doing it because they believe that it's in their best interest. So this brings me again to another point about bystanders, and that is they are often seen as kind of the saviors, as I said earlier, and that we want them to report, but they don't report bullying many times because they've engaged in it. So this person that I was talking about that I previously worked at, she didn't report it because she was actively engaged in the bullying. And why that is a big deal is because they don't want to report it, not because they think bullying is good, but because they don't want to be seen as the one who's doing the bullying. And so instead of reporting, they know that they've engaged in it. And so they just go along to get along because they don't want to receive consequences for engaging in bullying. But one of the interesting things about bully culture is that there are no consequences for bullying, only if you're the target. And so bystanders engage in bullying, they remain silent merely out of self interest for themselves and what they think is in their best interest, not what is in the organization's best interest. And for many of them, and more often than not, it's a win for them. Bullies are very good at gaslighting, and bystanders often fall prey to the manipulation and lies about the target that the bully has spread. Bullies, again, will beat a dead horse, so to speak, until they get people to believe the narrative about the target. They keep saying it over and over and over again. And bullies are often very busy in the background at work, spreading lies and gossip and finding ways to verify their lives with the behavior of targets so that bystanders and other people believe these false narratives. So, for example, a bully might say that a target isn't attending meetings that they need to be at and will spread this all over. Then, when a target doesn't show up to the meeting, the bully lets everyone know that, see, they were right. They're not doing their job. But what everyone else doesn't know is that the bully didn't let the target know when the meeting was or where it was at. It was an attempt by the bully, which often works, to manipulate and attack a target's professional reputation. And they do this over and over and over again, gaslighting everyone and manipulating everyone in the organization to believe that the target is the problem. And bullies do this over and over and over again, like I said, to show that the target is the problem. They don't provide all the information. They cherry pick information only to show that the target is the one with the problems. And so bystanders fall prey to this gaslighting and manipulation. And they eventually, over time, bystanders believe that the target is the problem and they cherry pick information themselves in the organization and in their environment to confirm their bias, right? This is my side bias. So bullies spread lies about targets. Bystanders believe these lies. Bystanders find information to confirm this bias. Okay. And then they eventually believe that targets deserve bullying. Another reason they don't speak up. So I do want to back up just a little bit and talk about why bystanders don't intervene. Many times, again, we believe that they should, and I think they should. But the misconception that we have is that somehow people in the workplace know what to do. They know how to handle these situations, and that's just not true. It's ridiculous to think that somehow you magically get into the workplace and you have the skills to know how to deal with bullies. Most people haven't dealt with bullies. Okay, so it's ridiculous to think that targets or even bystanders know how to deal with bullies unless you're taught how to do it. And if you know me, I've taught in higher education. I taught for over 20 years, and I promise you, they are not teaching people how to communicate effectively or to deal with bullies. These are skills that you have to learn. Okay, you have to know how to intervene. It's not hard, but you still have to know what to do. Okay, and I'm going to talk about 3 simple tips that you can use today after watching this video if you're a bystander, and you can help the target and help your workplace. The first thing I recommend is that before you do anything, you go have an open and honest conversation with the target about your own personal role as a bystander, your own thoughts and feelings about them and what's happening in your organization. And if you don't want to be seen with the target, I get that. But you can do it in a safe place off your work environment. Do it somewhere where you can have a safe and honest conversation and offer them support. Tell them you believe them. Tell them you know what's happening to them. Okay. You might even think about saying you're sorry, you haven't done anything, and admit you don't know what to do. You can reach out to them privately. Okay. Again, express your concern, offer support and help. The other thing that's really important, okay, again, don't just go in and report, document what you're seeing, okay? And that's really important because if a target wants you to report, I wouldn't recommend that you report unless you talk to the target, because sometimes your reporting can actually make the bullying worse. So go talk to the target, keep a good record of what's happening. Again, who's there, what's being done, who's it being done to, and what types of bullying behaviors there are. Okay, your documentation, if a target wants to report, can corroborate the situation. It's good. The other thing that I recommend that you do is you develop some strategies to avert the bully's attention away from the target. These don't have to be major. You don't have to jump up in a meeting and say, hey, bully, I'm over here. What you can do is you can do some very benign things that nobody is ever going to recognize as an intervention. So, for example, if you see a target walking in the hallway, you see the bully coming down after them, what you can do is say, hey, bully, I have a question for you. Okay, and ask some sort of question about what's happening in the workplace. Okay, nobody's going to see that as your way as a bystander of intervening in bullying. What they're going to say is, you saw that person, you had a question, and you wanted it answered. There are so many benign and under the radar interventions like that you can and get involved in that divert the attention away from the target. Coughing in meetings, getting up and throwing something away. If you see the bully going down to the target's office, you go down there too, right? Again, there are so many things you can do and develop strategies like that nobody's going to even know what you're doing. The other thing I really recommend is don't engage in bullying, okay? You can make a conscious choice not to engage in bullying, okay? You can. And that is what you should be doing. You should rise to a level of professional behavior that is commendable, not one that is bullying and unacceptable. So, under no circumstances should you, as a bystander, engage in bullying. Okay. And so the reality is that bystanders have to learn the skills. The other thing that has to happen is bystanders have to believe that the consequences for not engaging in bullying is more than the reward that they are getting from keeping their mouth shut, being silent, and engaging in the bullying. And for most environments, because they don't know, leaders don't know how to intervene, they don't know what to do, is that bystanders can continue to engage in bullying, continue to remain silent, continue to be complicit, which perpetuates bullying. And I'm just going to say this again, the consequence for not doing those things has to be more for bystanders than the reward for doing it. Okay. And so, what we do, in fact, know is that the role of bystanders in the workplace is super complex. It's often fraught with difficult decisions. Okay. People are making those conscious and unconscious decisions every day. And so, while it often does seem easier to stay silent or even align with the bully, the long term consequences of such actions continues to perpetuate a toxic culture, a bully culture, and it really harms everyone. So, by becoming more aware of the choices you're making, taking small steps to intervene, you can begin to shift the narrative in your organization away from bullying and try to create an environment that is built on integrity and empathy and mutual respect. One of the things that I want to tell you is that bystanders make mistakes. Okay. It happens. And what we need to do as targets, because I know that I was guilty of this myself, I get very angry at bystanders for not intervening. And I didn't understand that they were making those difficult decisions out of self preservation. But bystanders can make a huge difference for perpetuating bully culture or stopping it. And I think that what you have to do as a bystander is to remember that you are also at risk for being a target. Okay. If that target leaves, what bully culture dictates is that somebody else has to replace the target. And the longer you stay in that environment, the more likely and the more risk you have of becoming the next target. So even though in the moment it seems that it's better to align yourself with the bully or to stay silent, the long term consequence for you might be undescribable. I just want to thank you for being here. And remember that my empowerment coaching program is on the horizon. And I am going to need a favor from you, but I will talk about that later. So, again, stay tuned for more details on bystanders. We're going to talk a little bit more in detail about how targets can work with bystanders, different ways to approach them, some strategies for developing strategic allies, and that's really going to be important for you, again, to reduce the trauma from workplace bullying. And I just want to say that now that you've seen the impact that bystanders can have on the workplace, I want you to think about this. In your next encounter with workplace conflict or wrongdoing, will you choose to be a bystander who watches, or will you choose to be a bystander that stands up for what is right? There are some pretty easy strategies for you to do that, and I hope you do what is right using some of the easy strategies we've talked about today. Please feel free to share your thoughts and experience as bystanders or with bystanders in the comments below. What challenges have you faced with them, and what advice do you have for others navigating similar situations? Again, I just want to mention one more time that my empowerment coaching program is launching soon, and I'm going to be relying on your input and support to make it a success. We're going to talk about that more in more detail next week, so stay tuned. Again, as always, thank you for being here. I wish you all the best, and I hope you have a wonderful work week.